Hello everybody, my name is Dave Miller. I'm director of Sacred Breeze Ministries. You can find us at sacredbreeze.org. And I thought I'd do a little discussion today about, I'm entitling it COVID-19, Should We Panic? So there's been a lot of talk, worry, a lot of politics from the right and the left. You got the right wing saying this is all a liberal plot to force socialism on everybody. And we got the left wing saying this is all a right wing plot to steal elections or something. I don't know. Okay, fine. And there's a lot of variances in between of accusations that are being thrown back and forth. And I'm going to talk about some of those numbers, including how this compares to the flu and stuff like that. So in addition to being a theologian, minister, therapist, I'm also an engineer, which means I do math once in a while. And this is my attempt at sharing some math. So sit back, enjoy, fall asleep if you do that at math lectures, and we'll get into it. Okay, so this will be a little bit of a whiteboard thing. Hope you all enjoy it. As it turns out, humanity was given this great gift at the very beginning of this, believe it or not. And it was a closed system example of what this virus could do. And that closed system example was called the Diamond Princess. And that cruise ship, I think it launched January 20th. And everybody finally disembarked around March 1st. So we had a closed system for 40 days. Where people were enduring this thing. So what were the numbers there? I'm going to go to green for numbers, because my black is wearing out. 3,700 total passengers and crew. About 700, and I'm rounding numbers so you know. About 700 diagnosed. And of that 700, about 350 were symptomatic. About half were symptomatic. It was a little off from there, but I'm doing this to prove orders of magnitude. And when you start working in statistics, those onesie twosie things don't tend to not make a whole lot of difference anyway. And the third number is 14 deaths. And you'll see numbers like 11, 12, 13, and I think 14 is the final number that I saw. By the way, if you want a bibliography of this, I would suggest you Google it the way I did. Some of this comes from Wiki, other from articles, but these are the numbers I gathered. So we got this closed system. Now I'm going to make an assumption here. My first assumption is that because people were saying the air filtration system was not great, not HEPA, and because everybody stuck there for so many days, I'm going to say all 37 were exposed. All 3,700 were exposed. Okay? So everybody was exposed. Everybody was tested too, but not everybody was diagnosed. Well, what does that mean? If you assume, here's another assumption, that people were tested as they became sick, they were pulled out of quarantine, out of the rooms, and then tested as they became sick, then the rest of the testing would have happened later on. So it's possible that 3,000 people were exposed early on, were asymptomatic, never got sick, and they got tested 30 days later towards the end of the voyage, or 20 days later, more than 2 weeks. So that's the assumption I'm using here. And Already people are saying, no, terrible assumptions. Okay, fine. Well, I'm going with this, and we'll see where the journey takes us. So everybody was tested, but not antibody tested. Those weren't available yet, I don't think. So what kind of statistics does this suggest? Well, the total number of deaths compared to the total number of people exposed is 0.4%. Deaths to exposed. Okay. Deaths to symptomatic. You can see 350 symptomatic, 370 total, about 10 times, about 4%. 10 times more, okay? And here's another number that's kind of important. Symptomatic to exposed. That's 10%. Okay, you following me? About 10%. Okay. Now, why do we care about this? How does it compare to what's happening now? Right now in the U.S., we have a number of deaths to I'm going to call it symptomatic. About 60,000 deaths and about 1 million symptomatic. That's 6%. Okay? So here, this is the Diamond Princess, the closed system, 4%. In the U.S. right now, 6%. Aha, that proves that my hypothesis is all messed up, right? Well, no, not necessarily. That's assuming that everybody that gets tested goes in and gets tested because they're symptomatic, okay? 1 million people. How many people are symptomatic but don't get tested? How many people are symptomatic but don't get tested? Now, you ask this because not everybody goes in and gets tested, and everybody's saying this is a nasty test where they shove a swab way up into your brain, up deep into your nose. So, I mean, for me personally, if I was sick and not dying, I would not get tested. So it turns out that if 500,000 decided to not get tested, plus the 1 million that are tested, that would put the deaths to symptomatic ratio of 60K to 1.5 million to 4%. Interesting, huh? So that would explain that difference there. Closed system versus what's happening now. Now let's ask the question, how many people in the U.S. are exposed but not symptomatic? Well, we have that ratio in the closed system here too, right? 10%. So if we've got, let's say 360 million people. Oops, we're not there yet. We're not going to talk about 360 million people. We will in a minute. If we have 1.5 million people that are symptomatic, remember 1 million tested, 500,000 not. That means we have about 15 million exposed. And this is May 1st, 2020. Okay? So, 15 million exposed. And again, this is all based on my assumptions. We're just building a case here. You can either agree or disagree. That's fine. What's the death rate? What's the death rate to the total exposed? Death rate to total exposed? And I know there's smart math people saying, wait a minute, this is kind of cooked in. This number, and it is, it's cooked in, but 60,000 to 15 million is 1/10 of that, which is 0.4%. Which looks familiar, doesn't it? Because that's up here. That's what our closed system had. Death to exposed, 0.4%. Okay, so we got some correlation. Now, I know there's a lot of people saying, aha, 0.4% death rate. That's not much, right? Let's talk about that for a minute. They're also saying, I looked it up on the CDC website. It said the death rate is 0.1% for the flu. But if you read the fine lines, that 0.1% is deaths compared to people that hold symptoms. 0.1% of people that had symptoms died of the flu, and this was in 2018, okay? The 2018-2019 season. So what are the deaths to symptoms in our hypothesis here? Well, 4% compared to the 0.1%. What does that mean? That means that this COVID-19 is 40 times more deadly than the flu. And all the people that were saying, oh, 0.4% is way too low, got your attention now, didn't I? This is 40 times more deadly than the flu. Hopefully I got the attention of the people saying 0.4% is nothing also, right? 40 times more deadly than the flu. That's a big number. And that's enough to overwhelm our hospital systems. Okay. As long as we're playing with numbers, let's see what this 0.4%, how does it compare to the, I hear people arguing and saying, well, people are dying every day. This is just a part of that. Okay, let's look at those numbers. CDC said in 2017, the normal death rate of among every citizen in the U.S. was about 0.8%. I hear you. Aha, see, it's lower. Wait a minute. Hang on just a minute. Let me keep exposing what this means. So this 0.8% translates to about 8,000 per day. Deaths per day. This is our normal rate. In our hospitals and our mortuaries and funeral homes and everything, they're geared up to handle this rate, okay? This is what our systems are set up for right now. How many deaths per day due to COVID-19? That's easy to find. If you search the web today, it's about 2,500 per day. Aha, I hear you saying that's lower than the 8,000 a day. Well, that's true, but that doesn't mean it's not something to worry about. In fact, the reason we're at 2,500 a day is because we chose to do this voluntary isolation thing. Semi-voluntary. Because we're isolating, we've plateaued at 2,500 a day instead of skyrocketing to a much higher rate. So if this were annualized, if this went for an entire year, it would translate into a 0.25% death rate. So, now, here's another thing people are saying. Okay, the people that are dying would have died anyway. So this 0.25% would become part of that 0.8%. Well, I'm going to agree that some of it would overlap, but certainly not all of it. People with compromised immune systems may be dying sooner than they would normally. Because what they're saying is this thing is causing our immune systems to overload. So we've got some immune system things going on now that our immune system is working on. Adding COVID-19 may cause massive overload. And that's what's causing death. So in 2 years when they tally the deaths for 2020, they might show maybe a 1% if we maintain this plateau. It might go up maybe 1%. From 0.8% to 1%. Again, there's some overlap, but not 100%. Okay. That's all fine and good. But everybody's still looking at this 0.4%, the doubters. Saying, but it's still only 0.4%. And we're running at 0.25% now. And the normal rate is 0.8%. But this is only true as an annualized number. Remember, this is annualized. This is over the course of a year. So what does that mean? Let's pretend for a minute that everybody in the United States was on the good ship Diamond Princess. And everybody was exposed for 40 days. That's 350 million of us, or whatever the number is, up there. 330, 350, somewhere. And in 40 days, everybody was exposed. What would that mean? Well, in that 40 days, this is the 40-day scenario, there would normally be 320,000 deaths. And that our systems can handle. 320,000 deaths. However, if in that 40 days everybody was exposed and 0.4% of the entire population died, that would be an additional 1.4 million deaths. Compared to the 320,000 that would be normal. That would overwhelm all our systems. That would screw up our stock market. That would stop everybody from working. That would be people, digging graves by hands, I guess. I don't know. But that would be bad. So I'm hoping by putting some numbers in here, you can see that the 0.25% run rate we're having now is manageable. It seems to be manageable. If we were to do what some people are suggesting and pull away all restrictions, let everybody go to rock concerts and everything else, this is what could happen. 1 million deaths in a month. That would be bad. So let's go back to the hypothesis, the question, should I panic? Well, some people are going to panic. And I sure don't want to diminish the amount of suffering that's happened already and is happening. I've heard stories of young people getting strokes and, people grieving losses. This is real, and certainly hospital systems getting overloaded in Italy, Spain, New York, New Jersey. We're coming up to capacity to match what is happening with this 0.25% annual rate. We want to keep it there. We want it to go down. We don't want to pull off all the stops right away. And by the way, these antibody testing tests are starting to get available. And that means within the next week or so, we can start discovering these 15 million people plus that are exposed. And they can start going back to work. And we can start rebuilding our economy. Okay? So, should I panic? I don't think so. If this goes up to 4,000 a day or 8,000 a day, I think at that point we might have to put in more stringent controls, because then things are certainly getting overloaded. But at this rate today, I wouldn't panic, but I wouldn't ignore it either, okay? I think we're doing the right things. Wear the masks. Use the hand sanitizers. Wash often. Don't gather in large groups. Keep getting takeouts. Support your local restaurants by doing takeouts. And enjoy your lives as best as you can. Mourn your losses when they happen. And God bless everyone. Thank you.